On the Sidelines, Episode 7.
When the game ends and those Friday night lights dim,
that's the cue to turn our attention onto the very players, coaches, and community that makes football in Union County great.
Join Tim Winters as he covers the game from every angle, here on the Sidelines.
Hey, Union County Football Nation. Thanks for joining me today. This is Tim Winters, and I am on the Sidelines with Dan Orner. Dan Orner is a former NFL kicker who owns and operates Dan Orner Kicking and Punting. He instructs athletes from age 12 up through the NFL level. Dan's focus is on sharpening the skills of kickers and punters with the goal of fine-tuning mechanics, enabling a kicker or punter to perform their best when it matters most. Dan utilizes his NFL and collegiate kicking experience, in addition to his 15 years of coaching kickers and punters, to help mature a kicker and punter both mentally and physically. Dan's number one focus is on perfecting kicking form for optimal performance. A number of Union County kickers has sought out Dan Orner's coaching expertise over the years, including former Porter Ridge kicker Matt Logan, who is now kicking for the Oregon Ducks, and most recently, rising senior Weddington High School's Keith Duncan and Marvin Ridge's Marion Watson, who is headed to East Tennessee State in the fall. So there's a little background information on Dan Orner, and before we jump into the interview, I do want to apologize for the audio quality of this particular podcast episode. My interview with Dan Orner was done a few weeks ago outside of a Starbucks, and it was a little bit noisy and a little bit more ambient sound than I would have liked, but Dan is such a great instructor, provides such a great service, and I thought the content was just too good, so I decided to forge ahead. Let's publish this podcast and get it out to all the student athletes and any parent of a student athlete looking for great instruction from a great instructor of kicking and punting in the area, and that is Dan Orner. So let's get right into the interview. Well, Dan, thanks for joining me this morning. It's a pleasure having you here. I've given a brief introduction and outline about you in the introduction of the show. Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit more about you, your background, and how your experiences really pulled you into your coaching business that you've created.
So, my name is Dan Orner, and I've been coaching kickers and punters now for the last 10 years. My background, I grew up just north of New York City, and out of high school, had the opportunity to go play big-time college football at Michigan State, and then transferred to North Carolina and played my last 3 years in North Carolina. Had the opportunity to go on to play for the Minnesota Vikings for about a year and a half. And really, when I got finished, I kind of looked back at my high school career, and a lot of times it was me and my dad or me and my mom out there kicking, and there really wasn't that much form-focused training, individualized training. There was for other sports, in baseball and soccer. There was tons of trainers, but from a kicking standpoint, there was nobody that was, I would say, knowledgeable enough that you left there going, all right, now I know what type of plan I need to work on going forward. And in terms of what I do now, what started with one or two guys has kind of morphed into about 200 high school athletes. I work with pretty much all the kickers and punters in the ACC, a handful in the SEC and Big Ten, and obviously some local guys that are out in the Pac-12 and Oregon and Stanford. And then over the last 2 years, obviously through hard work, have had the opportunity now to have 7 NFL guys that I train on a full-time basis, and help console both of the guys who play for the Cardinals, Connor Barth, who plays for the Broncos, Sam Martin, who plays for the Lions, Jordan Gay, who plays for the Buffalo Bills, and also Spencer Lanning, who plays for the Browns.
And these guys are coming here to Charlotte, to you, to train.
So they'll fly in. They actually just left last week, so they'll fly in March and really train very hard, March and April, and then leave to go out to off-season training at the specific locations. And ideally, why they come to me is essentially I'm a swing coach. Obviously, these guys are playing at a high level. There's only 32 of them in the world, and it's humbling that they choose me. 7 of the 32 guys that are playing choose me as their coach and kind of eyes and ears to push them from a kicking and punting standpoint.
Can you discuss your coaching business? I know you talked about you're working with NFL players and veterans, and you work a ton with high school kids, but at what level do you start working with kids? Can you talk about maybe the age brackets that you work with and the type of coaching that's provided when a kid comes to one of your coaching camps?
So I would say the general idea, the general starting age would definitely be about 12 or 13 years old. And so it's basically 12 into almost 25. So the general starting age is 12 or 13. Obviously, from a attention standpoint, there's some kids that are more advanced than others, and the camps and sessions that I run are multiple facets. Some kids really prefer one-on-one type training. I would say that's probably my most popular. Then I also do small group stuff, where it's we'll focus on a specific skill, whether it be kicking and kickoffs or just punting. And the small groups are about 5 or 6 kids. And then I also have larger mini camps where there are about 35, 40 kids, where it's more competitive and there's more competitions built in. And then on top of that, I also consult for I would say 5 or 6 colleges where they hire me out to run their specific college camps, where it is more of a showcase. So I do the University of South Carolina, University of North Carolina, Appalachian State, Virginia Tech, and the University of Virginia. And those camps usually take place in the month of June.
Can you discuss, I know a lot of, obviously the families of kickers, they realize this at a pretty early stage, but the importance of a high school, kicker, freshman, sophomore, the importance of seeking coaching outside of school, because when you're kicking, and better than most, you really don't have, because of the resources at the school level, you don't have a kicking coach on staff. How important it is for a kid or a parent that sees, wow, my kid's got a leg, I think he needs some additional coaching. How important that is for a kid at that level to seek coaching beyond the high school coaching staff.
I think the timing of bringing in someone like myself is important. I do think that at sometimes, at 12 or 13 or 14 years old, parents are very quick to specialize very early. And in my experience, is that at that age, kids are still growing. They need to be kids. They need to have fun. They need to continue to be involved in all sports and continue to stay athletic. I would say the more specialized training comes in that, 9th or 10th grade. Obviously, I would say with a lot of high school and junior varsity practices, kickers are an afterthought. They're usually pushed off to a side field where they're basically having to entertain themselves for 1 to 2 hours. So having someone like myself allows them to sit down with me and develop a plan and say, hey, for these 2 hours, this is what I'm going to do to kind of keep myself busy and continue to get better and work on my craft throughout the year.
Discuss the attributes that a kicker or punter should have. I think obviously everybody thinks, if you have a great leg, but personally, I don't know if that's all that there is. I think there's probably more than that. What are you looking for in a kid where you see some potential other than just that leg?
I think they're, obviously having a strong leg or being athletic or having a natural gift is important. There's definitely other intangibles. I kind of look at what I like to see is that the kickers and the punters almost, the analogy I use is almost like a firefighter, where everybody else is running out of the building, all the players are running off the field on 4th down. The firefighters it's a burning building, it's a pressure kick, it's a pressure punt, the firefighters are sprinting towards that burning building. The kickers, you kind of have to have that mentality of, I know this is gonna, could possibly end badly, and I'm sprinting towards that opportunity. And there's definitely some kickers that are super laid back, and it's mislooked at as they don't care, or they're not competitive. And there's definitely kickers who are that atypical, ultra competitive type folks. So I think it's it can work in both ways. Connor Barth plays for the Broncos. He is, from the beach at Wilmington in North Carolina, very laid back. But when he gets on the field, he's one of the most ultra competitive guys that I know. And I have other guys, like Matt Logan, who's just competitive, super laser focused the entire time you talk with him. So there's definitely pros and cons to each one. I think at the end of the day, you have to have some type of, I would call, gamer type mentality where you enjoy being in that spotlight. It's a unique situation where it's one time down that all eyes are on you. When a normal play is going on and Peyton Manning drops back or Cam Newton drops back, they're looking at wide receivers, looking to see what Luke Kuechly does across the middle. This is one time where most of the time they're not watching the center or the outside guard or the wing. They're looking at the kicker or punter to see what the outcome is. So it's a unique time down where all eyes are on you.
Can you coach temperament, getting a kid to be calm or to be able to channel energies into just that kick? Is that one of the more difficult things for you or for any coach to coach a kicker in terms, not the physical aspect, but the mental aspect?
I would say the mental aspect is a huge part of what I do. With technology, it allows me to kind of, especially at the college level, it allows me to FaceTime, connect remotely and watch practice live with college kickers, with NFL kickers. A lot of times the kids that are used to the speed in high school, when they get to college and realize, the speed of college football, how much faster it is. And so a lot of times I'll go to a specific university and spend the day with the kicker or punter, helping them work on their operational time. A lot of times, kids look great in gym shorts and they get to college and they realize the speed, the pressure, the surroundings. And until they get into that comfort zone that they were in high school, just like in any other position, it takes a little time for you to get into that comfort zone. So I would say yes, it's definitely an area that working on your mental game, figuring out where your weaknesses are to make them a strength, to kind of feel like you're in your comfort zone, you get that confidence, you can start climbing.
Can you discuss, I know that parents will get very geared, especially this time of year now with the NFL combines and now draft day upon us. They start focusing on their kids. They see the potential there and they start driving towards that recruiting aspect. And a lot of parents go in very naive, not really understanding the process. Could you discuss the process for a kicker and punter, how that recruiting landscape might be different for them compared to other positions on the field of football?
With the kickers and punters, in terms of football, typically the other positional players are obviously on the forefront. They're usually the first thought. The kickers and punters, typically are it's a need basis. Unfortunately, with the specialist type position, there's a lot of folks that put on camps and combines that know enough to be dangerous or have a good business model, but don't really have the kid's best interests in mind. Typically, the way a lot of this recruiting process works for a kicker or punter is, they have guys like myself that work with them on a weekly or monthly basis. And what I always try to advise my kids is in the summer months of June and July are when college-specific camps are. So each university will have a kicking and punting camp. UNC will have a kicking camp. Duke will have a kicking camp. Oregon will have one. And I always advise them that is money best spent, where they can physically get in front of the college coaches. The college coaches can see them, can shake their hands. Some of the college camps are very instructional. Some of them are not. And it allows the kids to kind of see on a bigger stage, hey, this is the right fit for me, without someone telling them, hey, yes, you can definitely play Division I football, or no, you cannot. It allows them to see firsthand, hey, yes, I can do this. I need to work harder at this maybe next year. Or, you know what, maybe I need to rethink my thoughts, and a Division II or Division III school is best for me. And I think it opens the eyes of the parents as well, because you get a much broader landscape of how many kickers and punters are really doing this at a national basis, versus just the the microclip of North Carolina or even Charlotte in general.
Now, I guess maybe for the understanding for parents, if their kid was to attend a camp at Chapel Hill or at Duke, would the coaches that are on staff, they'd be there, but are the coaches from other surrounding schools come in to view these kids as well?
A lot of times with the larger Division I schools, they'll bring in a guy like myself to run the camp from an operational standpoint, from an instructional standpoint, and then the college coaches will kind of oversee that. But obviously, from a college coaching standpoint, it's a small fraternity. Even though there's 120, 150 schools out there, a lot of times, a UNC will bring in some FCS schools where there's some other smaller schools, or an Ivy League school comes, or maybe there's Division II or Division III school there. That there'll be additional coaches. That way, it caters to kind of all the kids. And which is, again, why I kind of suggest that as, if you want to specifically get recruited, the college camps a lot of times are the best bang for your buck. They're typically $75 to $100 for the entire day. And again, you get to be exposed to coaches from Division II schools, Division III schools, and also all the way up to the Steve Spurriers of the world. And more of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day, weekly and monthly basis, training with my guys is preparing them for those college camps, is preparing them for the Friday Night Lights type stuff.
Yeah, that's priceless, I think, when you're exposed to not only the local schools coaches, but coaches outside of the area. That is, for $75 to $100, that's money well spent in terms of the recruiting process for sure. In terms of a kid that's playing soccer, practicing kicking, or might be on his middle school football team, what can they do when they're away from the practice field, when they're at home? What can they do to train on their own? I know kicking is a lonely business on the practice field, but what do they do at home to practice?
I think definitely there's a good group of kickers that play other sports, and the guys are the most dedicated. Anywhere from guys who are playing tennis to guys who are playing soccer or lacrosse now in the spring, they're bringing footballs to school, and after practice they're going out and they're kicking and they're working on their craft. The age of, obviously, cell phones and so forth and apps have helped out immensely. There's a ton of great apps out there. Some of them are golf apps, some of them are sport-specific apps that allow you to take your cell phone out. You can video, you can watch yourself, you can critique yourself. There are some kickers that I work with that in high school or college that just specifically are just kickers and punters. So they utilize me as a guy as a supplemental workout, and then they have, I would say, really a game plan for every other week. Hey, this week I'm working on my kickoffs, and this specific thing I'm part of my swing. This week I'm working on my punts. Maybe it's my directional punts. Maybe it's my sky punts or punts out of the end zone. That way, we're taking a kind of a almost in all positions, kind of a quarterback type approach where you're implementing different parts of your game now in the off season, so that when June and July comes along, you can pull essentially any club out of your bag and hit that great master shot when it's needed.
Well, Dan, this podcast is really trying to address, all the student athletes that play football pretty much at every level, but it is concentrated more on Union County, Union County football. Talk about some of the players you did mention, Matt Logan out at Oregon, who went to Porter Ridge High School. Maybe talk about some of the kids that you've coached from the county in the past and currently, and what we can expect from some of the kids that maybe you're coaching right now.
Some of the other kids, I'm sure you guys know, Marion Watson, very strong punter. At one point led the country in average, which is just outrageous. I mean, Union County and particularly North Carolina over the last years has been just a hotbed in terms of, really the hard work that these kids are putting in. Keith Duncan, that goes to Weddington, he has an opportunity to break state record this year in terms of field goals, which is great because the other guy that he's going to break the record is Connor Barth, the guy that I trained. So it's great when a guy from kind of my team is breaking another guy's record, which is just to break a record of a 8-year NFL vet is pretty outstanding. I work with the guys at Cuthbertson. Thomas Hall, who's a kicker at Cuthbertson. He is a great 2016 kicker, kickoff guy, who's shown great range over the last year. Neil Sullivan, who does the punting for Cuthbertson as well. It's amazing to see how much it's grown, not only in Sharp but also in Union County. Porter Ridge has another great up-and-coming kicker named Brandon Szyminski. He's a rising 10th grader, and he has the characteristics of the making of a Matt Logan later down the road, and Union County is pretty loaded from a kicking and punting standpoint.
Yeah, I think obviously with the success that Matt Logan has had going to such a big name school, obviously it's a motivational factor for a lot of kids in the area, and a decent shot maybe playing at that next level in the NFL. How early did you start working with Matt Logan, and if you could discuss maybe his progression and what you see for him in his final 2 years and maybe beyond?
So I met Matt at the end of his 9th grade year at the University of North Carolina kicking camp. And I met Matt at the University of North Carolina kicking camp at the end of his 9th grade year, and I just saw just outrageous potential. And I just went up to him and said, hey, here's who I am, here's what I do. I really think, and we joke around this all the time, I literally said, I really think I can make you an absolute beast. And that was as plain and simple as a conversation. And I just left it at that. I'm not the type of guy who chases guys down or says, hey, you got to come train with me. I just left it at that. And then after the camp, he came over to me and said, I want to learn more. I want to be great. And for me, the thing for me is what I'm doing is I want to work with guys that are passionate about the chase. Whether they say to me, hey, Dan, I just want to be a good high school kicker, and that's it. Or I want to be the best JV kicker. I know I'll never play in college. And with someone like Matt, he has a passion for the chase to be great. And really, that's one of the biggest things. Probably the only thing I miss from playing is that chase for that next big ball, seeing how close you are to that next step of greatness. And for Matt, he's immensely racked my brain over the last 3 or 4 years, and from sending me video, we text on a regular basis. He allows me to see film from practice. He takes his cell phone out to practice. He sets it up. He texts me. We text back and forth. His process was, he was very raw early on, strong as an ox, could just knock the cover out of it. So really for him, it was dialing in, and getting a little bit, I would say, getting his kicking and punting IQ up. That way, when he went out to practice, he knew what he needed to work on versus just kicking a boatload of balls. Fortunately for him, he's super competitive, a perfectionist, and I think most important, just an all-around great kid that wants to be great, and kind of put his town on the map. And having a role model like that locally for 4 or 5 kids to see that and realize how, I would say, almost they could reach out, they can touch him, they can see, hey, this is a kid that was in my community. This is realistic for me. It's not unrealistic if I put in the work.
Yeah, just a quick story with Matt Logan. I mean, I've known Matt for a number of years now, and we had an interview scheduled at school. This is right after his commitment to Oregon. And it was probably late June, early July. It was probably 98 degrees. And I got there a half hour early, figuring that he's going to drive up. And he was on the Porter Ridge practice field, kicking field goals, dripping in sweat, punting and kicking field goals for at least, I asked him how long he was out there. He said probably about 45 minutes prior to me getting there. So he is laser focused, really driven, and it's great to see. And I think, a lot of kids get where they are for that work. And I know at Porter Ridge they say hard work works.
Yeah.
And in his case, it certainly has, and you've seen that as well. So I guess at this point, Dan, we're just wrapping up. If you could discuss maybe some things that you want to promote about your coaching business, maybe talk about your website, where they can follow you on Twitter, and any things that you have coming up in the local area for kickers and opportunities for them.
So my business is it's danornerkicking.com. We pretty much train here in Charlotte and surrounding areas, North Carolina, South Carolina, pretty much year-round. You can follow on social media. It's Dan Orner Kicking on Instagram, on Twitter, and just my first name, Dan, last name, O-R-N-E-R, Kicking. And in terms of camps coming up, we train pretty much year-round. There's a full schedule of training dates in May, and all those dates can be found on my website. And really, in terms of what I'm trying to promote is what I always tell guys: if you want to be great, I'm the right person for you. If you're passionate about this, if you want to be out there working extra time, I'm a great person for that. And really just want to try to help kids, pursue their dreams. And again, work with guys from all levels: high school, college, and at the pro level. And have camps specifically geared towards each person's level, from the first timer to the seasoned all-state Keith Duncan type kickers.
And then just in closing, in terms of a bit of advice maybe to the parents of student-athlete kickers and the kickers in general, what words of advice can you give to each group in terms of the development of their kid and the kid themselves?
I think the biggest thing is when you're looking for camps or you're looking to start, I would say, kicker or punter specific training, is make sure you do the research. Make sure you poll a couple families in the area, who they're working with, why they're working with them, what they get out of these camps. There's a lot of camps that promise a lot and offer very little, that are very expensive, $300-$400 for a day, and you leave there going, man, what did I get out of this? The biggest advice, just like in anything, is do the research. Make sure you talk to other folks that are in the community, coaches, and really understand, what your goal is and what you want to get out of each specific training session.
Dan, I appreciate the time that you've spent with me this morning to talk kicking in the area. It's great what you're doing with the local student athletes. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Dan Orner for joining me here on the Sidelines today. And if you are a student athlete or a parent of a student athlete who is a kicker and or a punter, and you are looking to perfect your craft or to fine-tune some techniques, and you are in need of a great instructor in the area, well, then you have no excuse. Dan Orner has all the experience needed. He has been doing it for years. It's high-quality instruction, as you heard in this podcast. I highly recommend Dan Orner and his kicking and punting instruction. And one quick reminder to follow me on Twitter at UCNC Football. And of course, for any youth, middle school, and high school football information, camps, combines, anything offered in the county, remember, 24/7, 365, UnionCountyFootball.com for all that information.
Thanks for listening to On the Sidelines, the official podcast of UnionCountyFootball.com, the #1 online source for football information in Union County, North Carolina.